I'm doing great, Hugh. Pleasure to be on. I appreciate you having me.
I'm glad to have you. I want you to introduce yourself to our audience. I think if you were running in a primary that didn't have the most famous person in Georgia up against you, you would be the nominee. But tell people about your background.
Well, thank you, Hugh. I'm Latham. I'm a proud native son of Georgia. Was born here in the state in Atlanta. My mother's from a small town in South Georgia called Bainbridge. Went to the University of Georgia about 20 years ago. 9/11 happened while I was a student there. Changed my life forever. I didn't have plans to join the military till that day, and decided I wanted to serve as a Navy SEAL officer. Had no idea what the heck I was getting myself into, and ended up spending the majority of my 20s trying to get there. So I went to Georgia Tech for a master's in international affairs, became fluent in Farsi and Dari, lived in the region for a full academic year, backpacked through Afghanistan, and then finally got picked up at the age of 28. Thank God, made it through SEAL training and deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, and then my final duty on active assignment was in the Trump White House as Director for Intelligence Programs, managing the Black Ops portfolio. So I've been blessed as a national security guy to experience both ends of our national security spectrum. I mean, executing United States foreign policy on the ground in Iraq and Afghanistan, and then at the decision-making table at the White House and the National Security Council. And that's shaped the view and my view in which I see the world. And we're in trouble in this country right now, both from threats from within. We're heading on a very dangerous pathway as a nation. But then I received every briefing you can get in the Situation Room on what China's doing, Hugh, and it's made me an insomniac. I mean, they're on a pathway to beat us if we don't get our act together, and that's why I'm in this race. I'm the father of a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and my wife and I want their future to be the American future they deserve, and we're watching it slip away by the day, and that's why we're in this fight.
Now, Latham, you may not know this, but I got a son-in-law who's a naval aviator, a son who's a naval intelligence officer, and a nephew who's a Navy SEAL. And so I kind of said, I love Latham, sight unseen. So you got me. Which national security advisor did you serve under?
So I served under H.R. McMaster, and then I overlapped a little bit with John Bolton. It was an 18-month assignment, and I mean, it was fantastic. I mean, we put our adversaries on their heels every single day while we were up there. Candidly, Hugh, I mean, serving in the SEAL teams, I'm sure your nephew feels the same way. It was my dream job. If I had it my way, I'd still be running and gunning in the teams. I loved every minute of my 8 years on active duty, but transitioned out for pretty unique family reasons. I've got a twin brother with Down syndrome named Ashby, who's my hero. He's made me into the man I am, and he lives with my parents, and they're not getting any younger, and there will be a day where he's going to come and live with us, and so I transitioned out to prepare for that. But I loved every minute.
I understand that. I also understand that if you're not leading a team, you don't really want to be a SEAL forever. I know Admiral McRaven, for example, and I know he has trouble keeping young guys like you in the teams because they want to be out running and gunning. Rourke, Dan. I just got so many SEAL buddies, and again, Navy family, nephew. Tell me a little bit about your vision for Georgia and this race. You're up against Herschel, and you're a dog. So you know what that means, right? That's like, okay, I'm a Navy SEAL. I'll run against Georgia's most famous individual. I can see you making that decision, but tell me how the race looks to you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Hugh. I mean, look, I tell folks all the time, I'm a Georgia Bulldog through and through. Herschel was my childhood football hero. However, I mean, these are incredibly serious times for our nation right now. Celebrities are not going to bail us out of this mess. We've got to do the work ourselves, and it's going to require serious leaders to do that, and leaders that show up. And Hugh, the fascinating thing about running against Herschel Walker in this race is I always viewed him as a competitor. But I mean, he is literally doing the Biden basement strategy. We just had our 5th and final debate 2 nights ago, and he was 5 times in a row a no-show. They had an empty podium for him, and that is not going to get the job done against Raphael Warnock. I mean, we saw him in action. You got to give him credit. He's a smooth candidate. He's a great debater, and we've got to have somebody that'll get up on the debate stage and hold Raphael Warnock accountable for the bag of goods that he sold Georgians. I call it the Warnock bag of goods, which is we have a terrorist run Afghanistan. We have an open southern border, which is Warnock's dream, by the way. We have inflation that's running rampant. And my wife and I are still buying diapers for our youngest. The price of diapers is through the roof. And who does that hurt the most? Lower and middle income Americans, the same folks that that Raphael Warnock claims his policies are best for. Well, I beg to differ, and I'm going to hold him accountable there. Now, Herschel Walker, he's in the lead right now, but what folks outside the state don't often realize is we have runoffs here in Georgia. If the number one candidate doesn't clear 50%, they go to a runoff with the number two guy. And with 6 of us in this race and Herschel polling in the high 50s, he's not going to clear 50%. I've out fundraised all the other candidates besides Herschel combined. I've raised $4 million to date. We're deploying those resources. And then all of a sudden, Hugh, once I have Herschel in that runoff, the odds that are against me now flip in my favor overnight, because in Georgia, you do not want to be the number 2 candidate in a runoff, or you don't want to be the number 1 candidate in the runoff. You want to be number 2. The number 1 position is cursed, and it's been that way all the way since Paul Coverdell. I mean, you lose if you're.
I remember Paul Coverdell. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting. You've got an ops plan. I'm not surprised. What is the website, Latham?
Yes, sir. So it's lathamsadler.com, LATHAMSADDLER. And please join the mission and support us. And if you're here in Georgia, you can vote now. We've got early voting from now all the way to Election Day on May 24th. So please support us. And I will fight for you every day in the United States Senate. I will fight for you and your children. And Hugh, it's an honor to be on your show.
Well, a couple more questions now, Latham. I've got your Twitter feed. I've retweeted your Twitter feed, and people will go to lathamsadler.com. On the domestic side, you're obviously a national security pro. I mean, there aren't many Farsi and Dari-speaking candidates running around the United States who've worked for General McMaster and John Bolton. And then you're a White House fellow. You left that off your resume, which is really sort of the icing on the cake. I believe you must have worked pretty closely with Jared at the time, because you were working on the First Step Act. On the domestic side of the agenda, what would you go to the Senate and try and achieve?
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to do. Number one is we've got to secure the border. I mean, it's so critical. We can no longer just talk about this issue, Hugh. I mean, now that we've got a terrorist war in Afghanistan and we have fentanyl coming over the border from China that's killing our youth more than anything, we've got to get serious about doing it. And the wall is part of the answer. I mean, I've received those briefings as well, where the Border Patrol agent shared that the wall helps funnel people into certain areas of the southern border, but there's also tunneling that goes underneath the wall. And we've got technologies right now that can secure our entire southern border, and we're not doing it, and there's no longer an excuse for it anymore. So that's my top priority up there. I also want to see us bring American manufacturing home from China. I mean, I would tell any board member, any business executive, if you are investing in China right now, you're crazy. You better get out right now while you can. They are at a cold war with us, whether we want to be or not. We are with them. And they view us as a couple 100-year fad and view themselves as a 5,000-year dynasty, and say the 20th century where you all reign supreme, that's an outlier on the graph. We're never letting that happen again. So we've got to start unwinding our manufacturing from China and bring it back home. But in order to do that, we've got to have the workers. I mean, every conservative candidate in the country talks about how we have to bring the manufacturing back home and build factories. Well, who's going to build the stuff in the factories? So I want to see us invest far more in 2-year degrees in vocational tech. We've got to get away from the only way that you have a pathway to success and dignity in this nation is a 4-year degree. We've got to start investing in those 2-year degrees, and I can help do that from the United States Senate. Then we have the talent here, and we can bring the factories home and start building again in America. And I want to see that happen, obviously, here in Georgia.
Okay, Latham, we have time for this. Given your experience with your brother, who has Down syndrome, I have never known the parent or the sibling of an intellectually challenged individual not to be extremely pro-life. But given the debate this week about Dobbs, I'd like to hear your position on that opinion and on the general issue.
Well, thank you, Hugh, and you're right. I mean, my brother is the main reason that I have the view I do. I am very proudly pro-life. I mean, it's unconscionable to me that you have countries like Iceland that are trying to get rid of people like my brother totally through abortion. So, look, when I read this draft, I was happy to see that, very happy to see that. I mean, I was very disappointed in the leak. I think more people should be talking about that, and I hope our justices remain safe and strong. But we should be proud to be pro-life. This is an issue, Hugh, that, I mean, the future is going to judge those on this issue. And I think as Republicans, sometimes folks are a little bit shy about being pro-life. I'm as somebody who shared the womb with somebody that has Down syndrome, I couldn't be more proud to defend life.
All right, my very last question, Latham, has to do with the Iranian regime, which you know so well. It appears that they're trying to kill people in the United States. There was the story about your old boss, John Bolton, being targeted and having to have 24/7 security. It's a two-part question. One, should we be protecting everybody that we know is on their list 24/7 around the clock? Because the Biden administration keeps playing around with that decision, as I'm sure you know. And number two, what ought we to send as a message of what will happen if they actually endanger an American via the Quds Force?
Yeah, so great questions. On the first one, Hugh, I mean, we ought to have a strong enough domestic security that we don't have to have around the clock protection for folks that are on that list, because anybody and everybody could be on that list. Candidly, I should be on that list. So I don't think we need 24-hour round the clock security for those on that list. We should have strong enough security nationwide in this country that Iranians can't go running around targeting people. So that's one. Number two, if they ever did, I think we need to make it abundantly clear that it doesn't get more extreme in that, and targeting the United States, and that would be an act of war. I think Iran has run rampant throughout the Middle East. They've made it abundantly clear it's their goal to dominate the Middle East. They view weakness in our current administration as an opportunity to execute on their agenda. And I share all the time, Hugh, I shared it with the Ukraine issue as well, that wokeness equals weakness equals wars we do not want. And that's why we are where we are with Ukraine. I mean, under Reagan, as you know, it was all about peace through strength. And our enemies feared us, and that's why we prevailed against the Soviet Union. We've got to have leaders that are going to take that our adversaries are going to take seriously. And when our president of the United States can't even get a return call from the UAE, I mean, that shows you really where we are right now. And it's why we've got to win these midterms in November that are critical to stop the bleeding out of Washington. It's why we got to win in 2024. We got to win the White House back.
Latham Sadler, great to meet you via Skype and on the air. Come back. Good luck getting to the runoff with Herschel. I think you're right about not getting to 50%. I hope you're number two. And everyone, LathamSadler.com. Thank you, Latham. Thank you for your service as well. I wish I'd said that when the link was still up.